Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial is set correctly to USA Prepares. We're delighted you're in class with us today. We broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains, Monday through Friday. And if you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Andy is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. We have a telephone listen line, 605-477-3249, 605-477-3249. Just me and a couple of Colts in the studio today. Looking out the window, and I see Bessie and Joe, our bottle calves, and they think that it's time for biscuits. They think that this is about the time that I run out and give them these, what's called range cubes. They're protein cubes, and they're the equivalent of dog biscuits for cows. And so during the next commercial break, I'm going to run out, give them a big hug, and give them some biscuits. You know, I was thinking about new cars, and I've been under the cars on the lift last couple of weeks, and we've had some 2008 plus vehicles here at the farm. Neighbors bring them over because they just aren't working right, and they ask us to fix them. And that's kind of a new thing, something that we never intended to do. But what do you do when your neighbors can't seem to find anybody to help them? Well, it seems like we're evolving into those kinds of aisles of the service industry, where we help people with their vehicles, electronic problems, and computer problems with their cars and light trucks, and gremlins, electrical gremlins. And you know what I've done is I've looked at new vehicles, or newer vehicles than we have. I'm talking 2008. That's brand new to me. And I've used the tip of my fingernail to just kind of tap on them, on the skin. And I don't know if I can make the kind of sound that I'm talking about, but, I just tap on them like, going around the vehicle. And what I found out was that the metal has become thinner and thinner and thinner. And when you look under the hood, you see something very similar. What you see under the hood is where we used to have a cast iron intake manifold, either for a 4-cylinder, a V6, or a V8. They've replaced that with plastic intake manifolds. And that's on Chevrolets, it's on Fords, I'm sure it's on other brands of vehicles as well. So why did they do that? And how come they all did it around the same time? Well, I think what happens is a company will say, we got a great idea. We can sell a product, and we can sell it to the auto industry, and let's approach them. And they say, we got this new plastic, and that really heavy, durable intake manifold that you guys used to have? Well, you can replace it with this new, lighter plastic one. So instead of weighing 25, 30, 40, 50 pounds, intake manifold might weigh 3 pounds or 2 pounds. And what does that do? Well, it reduces the energy needed to haul that intake manifold around. So your car theoretically can get better mileage. And they've taken metal out of all kinds of places. Supports, door, the weight of the doors has gotten thinner and thinner. Try lifting up a tailgate on a new half-ton pickup truck and compare that to a tailgate of, let's say, 1999. The difference is staggering. Staggering. What I mean is like half the weight. Half the weight. Now, Tailgate's about the same size. It's got an inner skin and outer skin, and it looks about the same, roughly, but they're much less in weight. How'd they do that? Well, they took material out. So when you are in a car crash and you're in one of these little shoe boxes that's really thin, you're probably going to get more hurt than if you were in a bigger, heavier, more massive vehicle. And the proof of it is, just take your thumb and look at the middle of any of those panels, like the middle of a door panel, the middle of the hood, the middle of a front quarter panel, rear quarter panel. Just push it in lightly with your thumb. And you say, wow, how is it possible that this thing is so flimsy and yet it holds its shape and the wind doesn't bend it in? I mean, how come it doesn't rattle going down the road? Well, I think they've taken a lot of pains in engineering to make sure it doesn't rattle. But if you look at vehicles that have been hit in crashes, little crashes, little fender benders, the kind of thing you might see in a parking lot where someone at the Chinese factory outlet backs up a little too far, doesn't see the car in the corner of their view, and just back into quarter panel. The dent that it puts in that car is just unbelievable. That's the proof that it's that thin. Now, is that what you want? Not me. Not me. So what do? I drive older vehicles. My daily driver is a 1996 Mercedes. Now, some people might think, well, he drives a Mercedes. Well, let me tell you, I honestly believe, this is my opinion, that Mercedes-Benz is the finest overall engineered vehicle in the world. And I buy them because I can get them very inexpensively. I can buy a Mercedes-Benz in pretty good shape, needing some repairs, for less than the original owner paid in sales tax for that vehicle. I'm very serious. My latest purchase was my daily driver, as I mentioned, my favorite car, best car I've ever owned. I've owned some pretty cool cars. But in terms of overall dependability, reliability, getting me there and back, fuel economy, visibility, put that all together, and this Mercedes diesel, it's a straight diesel, no turbocharger. It's not a hot rod. It's just a plain Jane, very simple car. I paid $3,000 for it. $3,000. Now, here's another thing to think about. When you buy a vehicle, you pay sales tax on the purchase price. So if you buy a new vehicle, let's say for $50,000, you're paying sales tax on $50,000. To me, that's crazy. It's beyond crazy. Because in my neck of the woods, sales tax can be over 8%. And our neck of the woods right here is not that different from many other locales. So why would somebody want to pay 8%, 9%, or maybe even more sales tax on a new vehicle? Why would you want to do that? Makes no sense. So there are people who are paying more in sales tax for their vehicle than I pay for the entire vehicle. And how did I end up with this 1996 Mercedes? Well, I also have, and when I say I don't really mean I mean the family. We have family cars. Nobody really has a car. We have ones that we choose to drive over others, and there are different reasons why we do that. But, so for example, we have another vehicle. It's an all-wheel drive Mercedes. It's a 2000. And this is an E430. It looks just like the 1996. From the outside, they look darn close. Just the taillights are different. Other than that, they seem to be identical from the outside. Well, it's an all-wheel drive vehicle, and at our farm, we live on a dirt road. And here's something that I do, and you might want to take a page out of our book and do this yourself. What I do is, I don't like tires that have low profiles. I'm talking about 45 series. So 215, 45, 17. So that's the nomenclature used to describe the tires. That middle number, the profile, the larger that number is, the more rubber between the wheel and the road. So, for example, a pickup truck, like a mid-size pickup truck, like a half-ton pickup truck, might have a 75 series. That means the tire is 75% as tall, the rubber part between the road and the wheel, as it is wide. So the bigger that number, the more rubber between the wheel and the road. The more rubber between the wheel and the road, the better the ride. The more cushioning that the tire has. If you have these these tires that are very low profile, that have very little rubber between the wheel and the road, if you hit a pothole, you can destroy that aluminum alloy rim. The rim will be bent. Now, the rim is the part that contacts the tire. Typically, the wheel is the nomenclature we use now, and the wheel is one piece. So when you damage the rim of the rim of the wheel, you damage the entire wheel. So those low-profile tires are more susceptible to being damaged by potholes than wheels with a high profile. So here's what I did. We had this E430 Mercedes 2000 vintage, and I didn't like the wheels that it came with. Now, some people would say, well, those are really deluxe wheels, and they're aggressive looking. Well, they're factory wheels, but I didn't like them because they had 17-inch tires, low profile. So I thought, I'll just buy a set of wheels, and I'll put a different set of wheels on this E430 2000 vintage Mercedes. I thought, okay, what's that going to cost? About $100 a piece. If I'm really fortunate, probably $125. So that'd be about $500 for a set of wheels. And then because I don't have tires for that particular set of wheels, I'd have to spend about another $100 a piece on tires. So now we're looking at about $900, throw in some tax, probably about $1,000 for tires and wheels for my E430, or our E430. Well, I found an entire car for $3,000. It had wheels, had tires, steering wheel, air conditioning, power steering, engine, brakes, transmission, rear differential, front suspension, seats, for $2,000 more. I thought, I got to be crazy not to do that. So that's what I did. And that's why we have another Mercedes. And, we've been collecting these things. They're hard for me to get rid of. I'll tell you a little bit more when we come back. But Sheben's joining us. OffGridMontana.com. OffGridMontana.com. Welcome, Rich.
Well, thank you, Vince. That was a short notice call, but I always appreciate being on and try to give information to the people. How are you doing today?
Well, let me just mention to the class what happened. So, class, normally Norm Shealy's on Mondays. And I don't chat with Norm Shealy before we go on the air. He just appears. He has no idea what I'm going to talk about. Or I have no idea what he's going to talk about. It's just live, and it just happens. And when I connect with the network at 9 a.m. Central Time, I have this high-speed digital connection and some computer software, and I just move my mouse up to connect, and bam, I'm connected in like a second. And the quality of the audio is good, and I've got so I can see the packets, whether any are being lost. I'm talking about digital communications. And so I connect, and I go, I'm here. And Andy's our engineer on Mondays. And so I said, Andy and I were chatting. I said, by the way, do we have Norm Shealy? Now, this is a couple minutes into the connection. And a couple minutes later, we go live on the air. And Andy said, he hasn't called in yet. That's okay. Well, I'll tell you what, let me give you his number in office and home, and you can try connecting. And I'll just do a monologue while we're waiting for, Norm Shealy. So, like 2 or 3 seconds before the broadcast started, the intro's playing. I said, okay, it's just me. And during the first commercial break, I called Rich Scheben, and I said, hey, hey, hey. And what did you say, Rich?
I can't remember. I think we were just making fun of the way we start our dialogue going, hey. And then I made a comment, and Vince said something like, isn't that what they say in the East Coast? And I said, well, back in New York, they used to say, how you doing? So for all of you New Yorkers and people in northern New Jersey, at least the older generation, I think you remember, how you doing?
There you go. Yeah. So Rich answered, and I said, so Norm's normally on, on Mondays. I don't know what happened, but would you like to join in? He said, sure. So here he is. No talking points, live radio. And I was talking about the way I buy cars, Rich, during the first segment. I mentioned how I pay about the amount that the original owner paid in sales tax. I pay for the car. And I've collected several Mercedes for the family doing that. And and the reason I was mentioning the Mercedes is yesterday I was reading the news, and I was looking at Kim Jong-un's houses. And in the background, you see two of his vehicles. They're both black. And in one picture of his mansion is a newer Mercedes, and in another picture of his mansion is an older Mercedes. And I thought, gosh, he's got the same car we do, and that's a 1983 300 SD. SD would be a turbocharged diesel. Now, this thing is it's pretty big. It would be like the size of one of the largest Cadillacs ever made. It was my dad's, and he left it to me. And it has a 5-cylinder diesel engine. It gets phenomenal fuel economy for such a big vehicle. It gets 30 miles to the gallon all the time. 30 miles to the gallon. In one of the biggest vehicles it wasn't the biggest Mercedes ever made. They made one that was bigger than that, but about 6 inches bigger. But still a pretty big vehicle. And there it was, the same vehicle that the leadership of North Korea has, and we've got one of them in our barn, just kind of collecting dust. Not that it's worth a lot. It's not. It's probably worth $2,000. But to me, I'd rather have it than whatever $2,000 would buy today, which is not much. So, Rich, when we come back, what would you like to talk about?
Well, I have an article here I think you'd be interested in, Vince.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that. Rich Scheben, offgridmontana.com. We'll be right back. It sure is nice to have friends. Rich Scheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. Kyle in Montana's calling in. Welcome, Kyle.
Good morning, Vince and Rich. How you guys doing this morning?
Hey, good, Kyle. How you doing?
We're doing well. Yep. Well, I wasn't sure where you were headed with Rich, Vince, and I was just gonna, if you had some ideas, I just had a few ideas of some things that might help people out as far as looking for used cars. But Rich said he had some kind of an article.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just caught the end of that, and I didn't want to interrupt him. But
if you have an idea,
tell us about your thoughts with cars.
Well, I just had these are things that I've been a service manager for Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler over the years, and there's things I don't know if I'm pretty sure you're probably familiar with it, Vince. But when a dealership gets a brand new car in, there are things called campaigns. That's kind of their term for a sort of a small recall, if you will. Sorry about that noise. I don't know why this guy is driving around here, but anyway, when a brand new car shows up in the dealership, there's things that one of these three big automakers forgot, okay, or overlooked, or something that they want to make it look good. Well, when we used to get General Motors campaigns, there would usually be, 2 or 3 sheets of paper that would explain doing one thing or 2 things that they wanted fixed, little tiny things sometimes. Chrysler, when we would get those things, those little campaigns, they would show up with maybe, on an average, 8 or 10 pages of things, and that would usually describe how they wanted 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 things done. But when we got Ford, I ain't kidding you, Vince, we would get a booklet that was probably 1/4 of an inch thick. And that it used to just irritate the heck out of us, because it's like, why would you ship something that needed that much work done before we could even put it out on the sales room floor? It's come up with, so anyway, I'm saying that just as a matter of people I landed on General Motors stuff. That's pretty much what I drive, and what every mechanic that I know, especially GM trucks. The earlier ones, these new ones with all the electronics on them, I don't own anything like that. The newest thing I've got, the 95 Chevy pickup and gas engine. I can work on it, throttle body, that kind of thing. And so it's simple, like, you can work on. The other thing that people need to think about is what kind of an area do you live in? Do you live where there's ice and snow and things? And if there is, the boxer engine of the Subaru is probably one of the best engines ever built. It's an aircraft design, excellent design. The all-wheel drive system on them, I've talked to numerous mechanics about that, and all of them say the same thing that I have talked to, and there was 4 of them just for this topic. And they're one of the toughest, most durable all-wheel drive systems on the market, bar none. This is in the, I would say, mid-'90s to early, 2004, 2005 range. They're just super tough transmissions and incredible engines. I have a friend of mine that has a 97, and his wife is still driving it, the original engine and transmission on this Subaru, and it has 373,000 miles on it. So and he's done little things, replace water pumps and timing belts and all of those kind of things, struts, brakes, that kind of stuff. But anyway, the same engine and transmission still going. Just different things. I thought, I didn't know if Rich had anything on this or not, or I didn't know which direction you wanted to go with this morning. But I thought if it was going to be a monologue, I'd try to help out a little bit.
Yeah. Rich, your thoughts on vehicles?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I went in and got my oil changed last week, and just for the heck of it, I talked to the salespeople while I was waiting. I had my little dog who's 15 and a half. His name is Killer, and he weighs about 5.5 pounds. And I told anybody if they gave me a bad deal, I would stick my dog on him. So anyway, I was asking about the prices. I bought a Dodge Ram brand new half-ton in 2011 for $27,000. And I asked to see, and Vince, we had this conversation last week also. I remember I was asking about work trucks, what you can get down in Missouri. And I was asking, what can you get a stripped work truck for? And it's almost impossible to find stripped anymore because they want to sell you all this stuff that you don't need. I would love to get a truck with roll-down windows. Well, basically, a stripped-down work truck, and this was a dealership that sells Dodge, Chevy, some used Fords. Anyway, long story short, I could not find a quote-unquote work truck for less than $32,000. And, of course, they have rebates for this, and they have rebates for that, and you get a discount for this, and you get a discount if you can stand on your head for more than 45 seconds. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's not like the good old days where you just go in and you negotiate it and say, I got cash. Can I buy this? And they'll say, sure. So there's so much propaganda and false flags and lies and professional wordsmithing, and it's at the point where I am so frustrated with trucks, and I know I'm going off into a little tangent of what Kyle just said, or vehicles in general, that I think even if I could afford a brand new truck in the future, I'm going to go used. And one of the reasons is because of the fact that we've bailed out so many of these companies, including auto manufactured. We've bailed out Wall Street. We've bailed out the banks. And when I say we, I mean the bottom 93%, the people, the American people. And it's gotten to the point where when you look at all the bailout that's occurred over the years, I'm deviating towards economic 101 here, the people have paid for it. But yet the CEOs, the CFOs, the executives, they kept with the people paying for it, whether it be through cost shifting or quantitative easing or any of the Operation Twist, who knows what names they had or didn't even have for something. We've bailed out all these people, and yet the big corporate CEOs, whether it be in big auto or so many different industries still pay themselves the increasing salaries from CEO through all the executive branches, and now they're doing cash or stock buybacks so they can raise their stock prices up and give dividends to their preferred, very wealthy, rich stockholders, and then they're cashing in their stock options after they artificially raise the price of the stocks. So I'll be honest with you, in the future, when I need a new vehicle, just out of principle, I am going to buy used. And speaking of principle, I know I'm going off into a tangent because 2 hours go so fast. Kyle, you're certainly welcome to chime in with us. There's one article that's I wanted to talk about. I was going to talk about it tomorrow, but since I'm on today, Tucker Carlson talks about FAA sacrifices merit for diversity, where the Federal Aviation Administration recently changed their hiring practices to sacrifice merit for diversity, and you are hearing me correct. And he says at any one time there's 5,000 aircraft in the United States where air traffic controllers are guiding these people. And if we hire for diversity in lieu of ability, in lieu of everything that makes people great, and as you know, Kyle, I don't know if you listened to me on the second hour on Friday, Vince basically didn't have time to say a word in edgewise because I went into a rant on one of the most important things in America, and that is the same rules, laws, and accountability, especially for getting a job. We've lowered the bars of standards and expectations so much, like with this air traffic controller, same with auto manufacturers. We're paying people who don't deserve to be paid because they're not using supply and demand, free markets, and it doesn't matter what industry we're in. And when you have air traffic controllers who literally could have hundreds of deaths instantaneously in our airs when we have 5,000 aircraft above the United States at any one time in America, it's the same thing with auto manufacturers. Look at the quality. Like, for example, I sold my girlfriend my old pickup truck for $1. Okay, it's got like 140,000 miles on it. It's a Ford Lariat, and it's a 2000. I sold it to her for $1, and I look at the quality of that truck compared to the quality of my Dodge Ram, and I'll just use an example of the tailgate. I need two hands to lift up the tailgate on her truck. With mine, I could almost do it with one finger because the quality of the products and everything is made to be disposable. It's made to be weak. So despite the fact that the prices are going up to pocket the executive's wallet, nothing is benefiting the people. And I know I went into quite a bit of a rant right there, but we've gotten to the point.
Rich, can you hold that thought for just a second? Before you came on, first segment, that's exactly what I talked about. I talked about the tailgate of an older mid-sized truck, like a half-ton truck, being exactly what you said. The new ones are very lightweight. The older ones are heavy. Kyle, have you seen the same thing in your experiences with the tailgates of trucks? And that's just a small example, right?
Absolutely, yeah, Vince. You know that this is the funny thing to me, correct? Okay, so I'll tell you a real quick story that'll sort of illustrate this. I have a friend of mine who does gun shows a lot, and he travels around. He had an 03 Dodge Diesel, crew cab, long box, and had a big camper on it, and he pulled his little trailer around to go to gun show to gun show to gun show. He's a dealer, and I'll finish the story here in just a minute.
Yeah, we're talking We're talking about vehicles, and we're talking about why when you see a little accident of a vehicle, like in a parking lot, a lot of metal is wrinkled up. Why? How can that be? Because it's thin. Just tap on it with your fingernail, you'll see. Rich Scheben, Kyle, and I will be right back. Rich Scheben's with us. Kyle in Montana. Kyle, you were talking about a 2003 Dodge diesel pickup truck, and we went into a commercial break. Please continue.
Yeah. anyway, so this friend of mine had this, and he had a big full camper on it. And I've been around the truck quite a bit. It was a nice truck. I mean, fairly decent, the body panels seemed well built and done. And so anyway, he's getting up and he's pulling this trailer and he's getting about 19 miles per gallon, he said, on an average with this camper and a trailer. Okay, it ain't a very big trailer. It's about maybe 10 feet by 8 wide. Anyway, full of his guns and ammo and stuff that he sells at the gun shows. Well, anyway, so he gets a wild hair, gets about 140,000 miles on this thing and thinks that he needs a new truck. And so he goes and buys an 016. This is couple of years ago. He bought an 016, and he said the first thing that sort of put him off was that the door panel seemed lighter. The tailgate was lighter. And he thought, well, man, maybe that'll be great. I'll get better gas mileage. They lighten this thing up, try to, increase mileage and stuff. So he uses the same camper and the same trailer and puts it on this 016, and he's getting 12 miles to the gallon. Well, he can't hardly believe his ears. His eyes, reading this stuff, and it's got tons of power and all these different things, but horrible mileage. So he had it back to the dealership 4 different times, saying something's wrong. I'm only getting 12. And they told him they ran it through every diagnostic test there was and said, nope, this thing is running perfect. That's making a long story short. So he's extremely frustrated because, fuel is a big cost when you're going all the way across Montana, to gun shows everywhere. And so he happened to be at the dealership one time, and an old boy came in with an 03 crew cab, long box diesel, just like the one he had, just a different color. And the thing had 36,000 miles on it. He couldn't believe his eyes. And so he took and traded that 016 in back and lost all kinds of money to go for that 03 with 36,000 miles on it. And he said, I'm back up to 18, 19 miles to the gallon, and I got a better truck again. He says, I'll run this thing till it drops. But that's just one little tiny thing,
All right.
One other little quick thing.
Kyle, hold that thought for just a second. You're absolutely right. We have a 1999 Dodge 3/4 ton 4-wheel drive Cummins turbo diesel. It gets between 23 and 25 miles to the gallon just riding around the truck. And, without pulling a trailer. When we pull a trailer, we get, if we're pulling a cattle trailer, about that 19 that you're talking about. Our son has friends who have newer trucks, and they're getting those 12, 13, 14 miles per gallon that you're talking about. So it's not just this one truck. The newer trucks don't get the fuel economy in terms of miles per gallon that some of the older ones did. So, how much is a 1999 Dodge Cummins turbo diesel cost if you want to buy one? Between maybe $12,000 and $15,000. Why? Because they get such great mileage. That's why people want them. They can pull. They really pull lots of torque, okay? And great fuel economy. The new ones don't. And the new ones look, more puffed out, more beefy, more masculine, but they're lighter, just like the tailgate that you talked about. So for us, we don't want new vehicles. We absolutely don't want. We have a friend who brought his 2006 Chevy pickup truck over because the air conditioning quit. And he figured we knew how to fix it. Well, to have your air conditioning fixed, it was an electrical problem. There's a circuit board that we replaced. We figured it out. It took us about an hour to diagnose the problem. And all in all, I think the part was maybe $26. It's a $400 dealer fix for a $26 problem because you can't figure it out. The average guy without an ohm-meter can't figure out what's going on. That's what they've done to us. Rich, I'd love to hear your comments. We're going into a break. When we come back, I'd love to hear what you have to say about your experiences with. Do the dealers hold you up? Are you are you paying what you think are fair prices for repairs? Or what? We'll be right back. USAPrepares.com. Everyone all set? Cocked. locked hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Rich Sheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. Kyle's with us in Montana on the phone. We've been talking about automobiles and trucks and how you're spending more and getting less, and the mileage is going down, the cars are getting thinner, and repair costs are up. Rich, your comments, and then Kyle had something else he wanted to share with us.
Yeah. Well, first of all, beware for all the people who are listening to this right now and realizing that quality is going lower in America, especially for getting a job and keeping a job, and bars of standards and expectations are decreasing, and that shows with the the products, goods and services, customer service especially in America. Don't be alarmed, because this is not going to be good news, but I guarantee you that the great majority of people will not be buying used cars for economic reasons. And if I may share, first of all these politically correct buzzwords that you hear me saying, like equality, fairness, diversity that I talked about in the last article, inclusiveness, prosperity, humanity, democracy, all these words that the so-called powers that be uses to justify their behaviors, these words have been hijacked by definition to use as a tool to divide the American people and make us lower the bars of standards and expect a lot less. So some of the math I wanted to share with you right now, in November of 2007, right before the big crash, industrial production was just 1% higher than it is right now, right before that crash. But today, consumption of durable goods, which is autos, are up 53%. So who's paying for that if everybody's broke? Because 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, 60% don't even have $1,000 in savings. Who's paying for that? It's being paid for through debt. And the subprime auto loans have been now in at least 2 years in that subprime arena. So as credit is collapsing, as the yield curves start flattening and probably will invert this fall, very few people are going to be able to afford these newer vehicles, which are less quality. Secondly, 43% of the U.S. can't even afford rent, transportation, child care, or cell phones. And this is under the second longest recovery ever. So the books are cooked for this great so-called recovery, and I use the term recovery in quotes. And recently, this data just came out, 76% of companies that recently went public had negative earnings. This is the highest level since the dot-com era. And the percentage of households with more debt than savings is higher now than at any point since 1962. So what I'm saying is that the last recession was just postponed by government intervention, and that's what all this QE was, is to create liquidity for the banks, and where 95% of all that money goes to the super wealthy, which is the top 1 to 7%, mostly the top 1 to 2%. So when you look at the bottom line on who's going to afford these goods and services, when this recession hits, it's going to be very few American people. So I think we're going to see, and especially if there's going to be a little bit of a trade war going on, I just think the American people are tapped out and they're broke. And this is another reason why people are going to be going towards used vehicles, driving less, and moving out to the country and getting away from urban, suburban America so they can control their own destiny with self-sufficiency and growing a garden and maybe alternative energy. And, Kyle, with you being an electrician, pardon my tangent here, boy, I just think this would be, since you lived off-grid and you have both options, on-grid and off-grid, ready to go, have you ever thought about actually doing this for a living? And, you're an instructor with Vincent Finelli at usaprepares.com, listened to by who knows how many, hundreds of thousands or millions of people on a weekly basis. Have you ever thought about literally just going into this off-grid and talking to realtors and literally being a consultant for every realtor here in northwest Montana and creating off-grid situations for people depending on how ability they want to live rugged, their capital resources, their skill sets, etc. I just feel I know you were talking about cars, but I just feel, wow, what a great opportunity here in America to get people together and to hire a Kyle who has been there, done that, just to help the people. Because with this math and these numbers and quality of goods and services decreasing in America, with the fact that political correctness would rather hire for diversity in lieu of being the best at one's job, which insults the work ethic, the ability and the intelligence of everybody in those jobs, which increases division and not synergy. But Kyle, I wouldn't mind hearing your thoughts on just that. Maybe even creating some live talks here in Northwest Montana and having these discussions and bringing that bottom 93% in where, you know, you can offer solutions for these people.
I see where you're going, Rich, and I agree with you. I do help people as far as just friends of mine and different things that come in, you know, to be able to set up systems and do this. I've consulted on a couple of houses just to help people out. It's just all it is. I still deal with this disease that is similar to MS, and I have days that are really bad, and the bad days sometimes are really bad. I mean, to the point to where I feel like I can barely get out of bed because it hurts so bad. But,
I forgot about that. Wow.
It kind of limits me a little bit. But going to your thought there just a minute or so ago about the people, if you can see the things that Rich is saying, and he is, I realize that probably most of the people that are listening to this broadcast either don't want to hear what Rich is saying and believe it and think that everything looks out here. Well, when we look at normal everyday life, everybody's going, and you hear Trump talk and everything is doing good, and you hear the media, the right-wing media talk, and it's doing good, and you hear the rest of the big charade that's being played out in front of our eyes for everybody to look at, while this big looming white elephant, it keeps moving closer and closer and closer, and we don't see it, which is the coming collapse. It is coming. I would just implore people to, if you've got a new truck or a newer truck with a $400, $500, $600, $700, $800 a month payment, I highly suggest that you let somebody else have that thing and just get out from under it if you can, and buy something that you can work on, and get something pre-1996. So 95 or older will make it much easier for you to work on it. There are ways. I mean, there's books out there. I'm just talking about not somebody as sharp as Vince. I'm just talking about normal Joe Blow guy. Buy a regular written factory repair manual for that vehicle. Learn about it. Read some of it. Try to get yourself out of debt, or with a minimum payment, $50 to $150 a month, if you have to go in debt for something. But this is coming. It truly is. I don't owe a penny on any of my cars, and I have backups. I have 2 Toyotas, 1 Subaru, and a Chevy pickup, and I need that 3/4-ton Chevy pickup for stuff that we do around here, hauling, getting our firewood in and things, and the rest. And I need a all-wheel drive where I live. I just like to have something with all-wheel drive. That Subaru, you just can't beat it. It has 230,000 miles, doesn't burn a drop of oil. It's a great little car, and it's all roll-down windows. I have the same thing on my Toyota car. It's a little Camry, roll-down windows, simple car. Just barely over 100,000 miles, but I bought it from an old woman that, it needed a little work. And so I did some work to it, got it cheap, $900, because it needed some work. And so I did the work myself. And, I just try to, I don't look as good as my neighbors. And people, this is a hard thing to grasp. I don't look as good as my neighbors. My cars don't look as good. My property isn't something that looks like it comes out of, Better Homes and Gardens. It's a functional lifestyle that I'll try, but I really don't think I can care any less what people think anymore. But I'll try to care a little less. It's just so that, I've just abandoned, I really have abandoned, in my heart and mind, I've abandoned the facade of what the advertising and the brainwashing that we live under in this country says I have to look like. I just don't care anymore.
You know what, Kyle? I got to say that the smartest millionaires, the happiest millionaires that I know here in northwest Montana, drive old trucks, wear T-shirts, jeans with holes in them, and they don't care about what they look like as well. And they just want to either stay under the radar or just live this outdoor, nature-loving lifestyle. And that's why they're here. And, what you just said was extremely well said. And you can put an exclamation point on that. I agree. Now, Vince, we only have less than 45 minutes of the show. If it's okay with you guys, we can certainly dovetail into hypocrisy. And I always talk about practice what you preach laws. And Vince, I know you love talking about gun control, and I've heard you talk about it before too, Kyle. But there's some article here that I think we need to talk about before the end of the show, and it's titled "The Height of Hypocrisy."
Just one quick question: when you say gun control, are you talking about making each shot count?
Well, we're going to do that on this side.
Okay. Rich, Kyle, and I will be right back. We're going to be talking about making each shot count. Rich Sheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. Kyle's with us in Montana. Who is next?
Well, I have this article I'd like to talk about. I think you guys would love.
Gun control.
Yes.
Gun control.
Yes. And it's titled on my email, "The Height of Hypocrisy," and a friend of mine sent this to me, but it's titled, "Obama Secretary of Education and staunch gun control advocate Arne Duncan sends his kids to a school with armed security." On May 20th, Breitbart News reported that Duncan suggested Americans ought to pull their kids from school until Congress passes more gun control. He said he and his family would even be willing to take part in a school boycott if this was done at scale. For example, if there were broad-based participation in such a boycott. Duncan made this suggestion in the immediate aftermath of the attack of Santa Fe High School. He did not call for armed teachers or armed personnel in school. Rather, he focused on gun control, which is their agenda, to basically control the American people, and who knows, even create genocide. Who knows where it might go. But Duncan sends his children to a school that affords them armed protection. I hope I was clear with my syllables. The Jewish World Review reports that Duncan's children attend the exclusive private University of Chicago laboratory schools in Tony Hyde Park, which a lab school for sure brags is patrolled by the University of Chicago Police Department and private security. And, and I can talk more, read more excerpts from this article, but, what we really talk about, Vince and Kyle, is every day we talk about a different set of rules, laws, and accountability for different groups in America, and how the bars of standards and expectations has been lowered for getting a job and keeping a job. And this is why I hate using the terms hypocrisy and double standards. And this is why I've talked till I'm blue in the face for years about practice what you preach laws. Practice what you preach laws. If we had this where if somebody is a gun control advocate and yet they have the audacity to hire private security for themselves, their family, whatever, and they tell the rest of the poor middle class who can't protect themselves to say, you can't protect yourselves forever, that's it, you're done. But the elite who have the Hollywood venues and all the super wealthy meetings, they have guns up to yin-yang to protect themselves. Double standards and hypocrisy, the words don't fly anymore. We have to have practice what you preach laws. I know I've said this to Vince many times, and I know you've listened, Kyle. But what do you think about practice with your priest laws? And are you tired of the double standards and hypocrisy by the so-called progressive Democrat liberal, which they're not liberal, they've been hijacked by the globalist party? What do you think, Kyle?
Well, I'll tell you, Rich, I think it's, in my mind, what I've done with my life is I carry things out in my mind to where the logical end and conclusion is going to end up. And in my mind, the only way this country does anything that's going to survive is going to be either a financial collapse and we pull it out of the rubble. It'll be a world war that we'll wind up losing and pull ourselves out of the rubble, or have to deal with an invasion, or an economic collapse, which I think is inevitable. And so if that's where it's going, the only way out of this thing is the rebuild. I don't hardly see personally, I don't see a way to be able to change things from the grassroots anymore. It's, that's why I think Vince's show is so important. And I think you waking people up is so important, because the only thing that I think is going to happen right now is how people are preparing themselves right now for the aftermath, because that's what we're going to deal with. I don't think we're ever going to stop these huge, lousy, rotten corporations and government and corporations that own the government from fleecing the American people. All we can do is try to wake each other up as to how we're going to be able to make it when there is hardly any money. I'll finish this on the other side of it there if you want.
Yes, absolutely. We'll be right back in just a couple minutes, going into a commercial break. Then I've got a comment about what Rich and Kyle have mentioned with gun control. Kyle, please continue.
Okay. Anyway, I don't see. People say we've got to get out of this left-right paradigm. Okay, but the reality is we're not ever going to be able to get out of that. It's just not going to happen, because anytime you have a left paradigm trying to push you into a communist, globalist, controlled agenda, and a right paradigm that's standing for freedom and the ability to stand on your own 2 feet and do what you need to do to help yourself, and believes in freedom and personal responsibility, you're going to have that clash. It's just sort of the old right and wrong, black and white. I don't mean that in a racial sense, but I mean black and white contrast to life. It's just the way it is. And the truth of the matter is, if we really think back through history, I was doing this the other day, change normally comes from the top. Where did women start getting into smoking? It's when they launched that multimillionaire guy launched the ad campaign of tricking women, making them think that they were exercising their freedom and their independence by smoking. Okay, that was from the top down, and it ended up working its way into our society to where it became a normal part of life. Okay, it's extremely difficult to change the entirety of society, and almost never happens where you change the entirety of society from the bottom up. What you can do, though, that is wisdom, is to try to change things around you, your neighbors, your friends. Get connected with them, because I guarantee you will not be able to stand by yourself. You can't do it. I don't care how tough you are, how good of a shot you are, it does not matter. None of those things. You cannot stand by yourself. You will need friends. And small communities, small groups of people getting together, calling, talking to one another, learning what each other knows, and a willingness to not carry a big ego or your feelings on the end of your shirt sleeve so that you're getting them bumped all the time. People have just got to grow up and realize, though, that you got to take responsibility not only for you, but you got to take responsibility for those people that are around you that don't know what you know. Because if everybody, my dad said something to me one time, and it stuck with me, and people need to think about this. I was a young kid, and we're sitting at Walmart, and Dad would never go into the store because he hated Walmart, but my mom would shop there. And so I was sitting in the car with my dad, and this guy walked out of the store there, and he looked seriously dumber than a post. And Dad said something to me, and he said, do you think if that guy could choose, that he would choose to be an ignorant, stupid guy? If he had the ability to choose, would he choose that? And the answer is obviously no, he wouldn't. None of us would. But so all of us have been given gifts that are, Riches is unbelievably great at figuring out and seeing these financial things to warn people, and he's extremely smart and sharp with all of these financial issues. Vince, you're good at almost everything, and you're an extreme rarity. It's just not very many people are as good with finances as they are with automobiles, and you're an extremely intelligent guy, but there's other people that's out there that really, they just don't have this ability. So they need help learning and growing and how to get them through things, and they just don't have it. And, it's like Scripture says, Jesus said, the poor you will have with you always. And that's just a fact, because not every man is born with the same intelligence or ability level as every other man. It's just not possible. It's just truth. And so we've got to think in terms of how can we help? How can we try to help these people get on their feet, help them see, help them lead by example, like you've done, Vince, and you too, Rich. You guys, you live off grid. You've been moved toward this stuff. We're leading by example. We talk about gardening. We talk about automobiles. We talk about debt. We talk about getting out of it. All of these things, we try to lead by example, and we're doing it on a radio, but and that's important, extremely important. But also we need to think in terms of everybody around us. People that you just see. Do they need help? Well, can I help you? My son, just as an example, yesterday helped a lady that he barely knows because she got in a fender bender. She's a wife, a mother with 3 kids. Husband's worthless, left her, and she got in a fender bender and she couldn't drive her truck. And it's the only way she's got to get to work. So I loaned him a porta power and everything, and he said, I got it, Dad, I can handle it. So he went out there and took that porta power and bent her fender back out. At least it's drivable. Just people that just are going to need help. James Wesley Rawls said one time, I'll never forget his quote. Now, I think it was either in the book or I heard him talking about it. And he said, when this stuff hits the fan, give till it hurts. Because not everybody is able to do mentally, physically, or emotionally what you can do.
Very well said. Very well said.
Yeah.
I have a comment about gun control. I'm just going to read the headlines. I was stunned when I saw this. DailyMail.com. Here's the headline. Dancing FBI agent accidentally shoots man inside Denver bar after gun that fell out of his waistband while doing a backflip goes off. So here's an FBI agent. He's at this bar. It's called the Mile High Spirits Distillery and Tasting Bar in Denver, Colorado. So there's a video of this FBI agent. He's got his gun in the middle of his back, okay, and he does a backflip. He really does. And the gun falls out of his waistband. He goes to pick it up. Bang. A guy gets shot. Now, there's a lot of things wrong here. Number one, what responsible person is going to be drinking and bringing a gun into a bar, okay, or a distillery? Who's going to do that? Not anybody that I know that's responsible. Number two, how is it possible that when this gun fell out of his waistband, that and I saw the video, he just reached to pick it up with his left hand and it went off. Now, it wasn't an accident that it went off. It had to be, the safety had to be off, or there was no safety. Now, I guess these guys are trained that, having your safety off is going to save you, a tenth of a second. So he's in a bar, he's irresponsible, he's doing a backflip, he's an off-duty FBI agent, and he shoots somebody in the bar. Witnesses, it's on video. The muzzle flash is on video as he's reaching for the gun, touches it on the floor. As he goes to grab it, bang, it goes off. Now, I know that my 45 has a couple things I have to do to make it go bang. One, I have to have the safety off. Two, a 45, you have to have a hammer back. Now, a lot of the modern weapons have and there's a grip safety too. So you have to firmly hold it in your hand, squeeze the grip, have the safety off, a second safety, and then squeeze the trigger. This guy just goes to pick it up and it goes bang and shoots someone. So let me read the rest of the headlines. Police say they responded to a shooting around 12:45 a.m. on Saturday morning at the Mile High Spirits Distillery and Tasting Bar in Denver. Paramedics were called to the scene and escorted the wounded man to the hospital, who sustained a gunshot injury to his leg. The FBI agent can be seen nonchalantly walking away, appearing not to be too concerned that his weapon just discharged inside a crowded bar. The agent was taken to Denver Police Headquarters and released into the custody of an FBI supervisor. This whole thing smells. First of all, he shouldn't have had the gun in there. Second of all, when it went off, he should have immediately tried to figure out who was injured and immediately help with first aid, not walk away. 3, why did the Denver Police Department release this guy who just shot somebody to an FBI supervisor? Why isn't this off-duty FBI agent in the hoosegow of the Denver Police Department? Why? It's their jurisdiction. Why? The whole thing smells. Now, Rich, you talk about different rules, different accountability, different privileges, 2 standards. There it is. There's an example. There's an example. It's an outrage. Absolute outrage. The guy should be fired. Okay? Investigation should take 20 minutes. We got the video. You're in the bar. You shot somebody. You acted irresponsibly. We don't need you in the FBI. Make an example out of this guy to serve as the example for all the rest who are thinking about bringing their guns into a bar. I know a guy who was a former Missouri State Representative, selected for our voting pleasure. He brought a gun, a loaded gun, into a bar, was drinking. He left it in his briefcase. I guess he had enough alcohol in him to forget his briefcase. The staff at the bar found it and called the police. They said, this guy, here's his ID, here's his briefcase, here's his gun, it's in a bar, it's against the law. And he was arrested. Somehow he got out of it, and his mugshot was on the internet, and he paid to get it removed. There's no record of it. I know the guy, and I know what happened. I saw the mugshot. We'll be right back. The nice thing is that the news has blacked out this guy's face, the FBI agent. There is no mention of his name. So you can go to a bar in Denver. You can do a backflip. You can let the loaded handgun fall out of your waistband, shoot somebody, and not make the news in terms of specifically who you are. And, you can get your supervisor to have you released from the police department so that they can, kind of counsel you and say, you know what, maybe that wasn't such a good idea, but no problem. We'll have you back on the street, in a couple minutes. Rich, any comments? Kyle, any comments?
Yeah. First of all, again, reinforcing the fact that we have a different set of rules, laws, and accountability. One for the aristocracy, one for the serfs. And for the bottom 93%, they're made up of whatever group you're in, so we can have chaos and infighting and not synergy. But even the official so-called authorities, and even the unelected official so-called authorities, are bought and paid for. And we can see that with all the scandals going on with the FBI, CIA, the DOJ, the NSA. I mean, it's never ending. The whole system is bought and paid for. And it really is a real shame. But I want to address one thing that you said too, Kyle. It's hard to change things from the bottom up. I don't disagree. But that's what we try to do here. And, you know, one of the things that happened, you know, we give personal stories about our life because nobody else will. I mean, because we don't have the backing of the establishment to basically contrive an agenda. But when I was I started my equity in a trailer park in New York, the suburbs of New York City, because I couldn't afford a home. And long story short, people kept saying, oh, you're just going to stay in there forever, you're never going to leave, because that's what people do. Once you're there, and you were talking about people in despair and people giving up and not choosing to be dumb. Well, I'll be honest with you. I think this whole system of what I talk about on a very regular basis, with group identity politics, having a separate system of rules, laws, and accountability based on what group you're in, has lowered the bars of standards and expectations for getting a job and keeping a job, which is the number one source of our degradation in America. Because you insult, degrade, and disrespect all these people. You never empower a nation, a group, an individual by lowering the bars of standards and expectations for getting a job. This, and if you listen, I don't know if you listened Second Hour Friday, I went on a rant, and I talked about how this is metastasized like a cancer throughout our whole society regarding our traditions, heritage, culture, and this victim group status, protectionist group status, group identity politics. You know, lawyers telling me I couldn't sue because I didn't have enough group self-pity points. And us swallowing these hijacked words by definition, like the democracy, accountability, diversity, prosperity, fairness, equality. These words mean absolutely nothing when 78 or 80% of people live paycheck by paycheck. They are just basically trying to divide us. They're trying to get votes. They're trying to make sure that the little people can no longer control their own destiny. And I really feel that that trailer park, by starting at the bottom, gave me the opportunity to establish equity so I can pay my college, which I paid for 100% by myself, and eliminate despair and have opportunities. But now we've gone full circle to the point where there's so much despair because hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications no longer matter. It all depends on what group you're in, whether you're a bailed-out auto manufacturer or Wall Street, or whether you're a FBI agent who's shooting up people in bars. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters anymore because it's all about what group you're in. And this is why the powers that be want to use the term identity politics to avoid the word group on what they and the Frankenstein that they've created in America. Vince?
Kyle, we've got a few seconds. Any comments?
Yep, one real quick. You know, this entirety of this entire society, folks, has been engineered this way, and I'll guarantee you, whether you're a serf or whether you think you're in control, you've been engineered towards stupid, and there's no shortage of stupid anymore.
Yeah. Ron Allen said that. Ron Allen said that when he was talking with you about commercials. Who were they targeting? And these dumb guys say, "Hey, that sounds like me." Thanks so much, guys, for being with us.